Hi. Hi, everyone.
Accessible transportation, healthy and affordable.
You're now live on the website.
Thank you, Dr. Ritz, Dr. Finesca, the
Hi.
top institute for research
Hi,
on
everyone.
Alzheimer's disease, accessible the aging brain at Columbia University, healthy and affordable.
You're now live on the website.
Thank you, Dr. Ritz, Dr. Finesca, the top institute for research on Alzheimer's disease and the aging brain at Columbia University, for co-hosting this event and providing vital information to our borough about Alzheimer's disease, risk factors, and important information about what we as a community should know about this heartbreaking disease. Queens nearly has 2.4 million residents, representing more than 190 countries in 200 languages. That diversity is our strength. Queens is growing at an incredible rate. Families from all across the world are saving to move here, invest here, start businesses here, and send their kids to our schools. Yet, we always have to remember that the most important thing for our families is our health. If our families aren't healthy, we are not reaching our potential as a borough. We see this is especially true during this unprecedented time facing the COVID-19 pandemic. As we think about ways to stay healthy from the coronavirus, we must not neglect other parts of our health, and that encompasses our brain health. That is why I believe it is so important to co-host events such as these informational sessions, which sheds light on diseases such as Alzheimer's and associated risk factors. The 2018 New York City Health Profiles report by the New York City Department of Health describes social determinants of health which are directly related to good health. These include secure jobs with benefits, well-maintained and affordable housing, safe neighborhoods with clean parks, accessible transportation, healthy and affordable food, and quality education and healthcare. In February 2019, the Top Institute reported that Queens has the second largest older adult population of any county in the state. In Queens, there are areas with significant economic stress, limited access to healthcare, and a high rate of poor health outcomes, specifically diabetes, hypertension, and obesity. These factors increase the risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. Both African Americans and Latinx Americans are twice as likely to have Alzheimer's disease compared to non-Hispanic whites. For example, 59% of Jackson Heights residents are rent burdened, a higher rate than residents citywide. In Rockaway, in Broad Channels Elementary School, absenteeism rate is higher than the rate for New York City overall. 7 out of 10 high school students in Rockaway and Broad Channel graduate in 4 years, lower than the citywide rate. And in Flushing and Whitestone, 25% of residents live in poverty, compared with 20% of New York City residents. With all these factors being highlighted, it is so important to have a resource, such as the Taub Institute, sharing a screen with us today in order to provide information to try and stem the tide of this disease in our borough and support the Queens community. Thank you, Dr. Ritz, for the information you are providing today, and I look forward to our continued work together. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you so much, the Queens Borough President Donovan Richards. It's our pleasure to be here today. I want to welcome everyone to the webinar, and it's an honor to do this collaboration and co-hosting this event because it's a topic, Alzheimer's disease, memory loss. It brings a lot of toll on many families, and everyone that's joining the webinar today probably has a family member or a loved one that's dealing with some form of memory loss. And caring for a loved one is rewarding, but can also be really difficult. So this webinar will show you how to take care of that person, and also provide some resources to help you assist with your loved one. Again, this webinar is a collaboration between Taub Institute at Columbia University and the Queensborough President Donovan Richards. On behalf of Columbia University, I want to express our gratitude and appreciation for this opportunity of having Queensborough President co-sponsoring such an important event with us. The Taub Institute is deeply committed to educating our patients, community members, practicing physicians, and the next generation of Alzheimer's researchers. Without further ado, I'll turn over the floor to my colleague, Dr. Israel Martinez, who will say some words and let you know more the Queensborough president reading his bio. Take it away, Israel.
Thank you, Sandra. It's our pleasure to be here, and it's my pleasure to present Queensborough President Donovan Richards' bio. Donovan Richards Jr., a lifelong resident of Southeast Queens, was elected as borough president in November of 2020. Growing up he lived in Jamaica, St. Albans, and Hollis and Rosedale, with frequent visits to grandparents who lived in the Rockaway. He attended Jamaica High School and Redemption Christian Academy before studying communication, radio, and TV at Nyack College. He later received a degree in aviation management from Wagoo College. Donovan got his start in politics after the tragic killing of a close friend inspired him to get more involved in his community and join the fight to end gun violence. He worked in numerous positions within the city council, where he connected with the community and developed a hands-on approach to helping constituents. This knowledge was crucial in getting him elected to the city council in 2013. As a fighter for affordable housing, he was proud to serve as the chair of the subcommittee on the zoning and franchise during his first city council term. He used this position to fight for rezoning in the Rockaway to increase residential abilities as well as commercial and community space, including a new library. He also served as the chair of the Committee on Environmental Protection following Superstorm Sandy. Through his position, he was able to help secure funding for flood protection to protect Rockaway communities. He has been a steadfast advocate for criminal justice reform, most recently acting as a chair of the Committee on Public Safety. In that position, he has held numerous hearings on NYPD protocols surrounding protests, cannabis, and the Special Victims Division. In the City Council, he has been a proponent of closing records, islands, and legalization of adult-use cannabis. As Queensborough President, Donovan is leading the effort to revitalize our great borough and make it one which works for all of its residents and workers. We are very glad to be here and be part of this event with the Queensborough President. Thank you so much for allowing us to host this event with your community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Israel. Now I'm going to share my screen, and I want to make a sec. I would like to present the team behind the Columbia team behind this event. And we work under the leadership of Dr. Christian Ritz, who's an associate professor of neurology and epidemiology at Columbia University. I'm going to read her bio after this presentation so you can know her better. And within the team, we have two different projects that we include underrepresented population, such as the project that we have with African American Study, which is coordinated by Dr. Israel Martinez and myself as the staff associate researcher. Also, we have a project that works with the early onset of Alzheimer's disease, meaning less than 65 years old. And this project is coordinated by Dr. Baez and Tamita Payodeli as the staff associate researcher. Along with the research and the study that we are really committed to do a lot of educational sessions on in different communities and partner with organizations. So we are open. As the same day we are doing this webinar with the Queens Borough President, if you feel that you have the need in your community to have something similar, please feel free to reach out to us and we can schedule and plan a webinar or educational sessions. We've been working with a lot of faith-based organizations, churches, and community-based organizations. I will put my contact in the chat and you can feel free to reach out. Now I am going to read Dr. Ritz's bio. She will be doing the presentation today talking about Alzheimer's disease and important information related since the symptoms that you have to look out, and also resources that are really important if you or someone that you know are experiencing memory loss. Dr. Christian Ritz is an associate professor of neurology and epidemiology at Columbia University Medical Center and affiliated with the Department of Neurology, Department of Epidemiology of the Sergifsky Center and the Taub Institute for Research on the Aging Brain. Dr. Ritz earned her medical degree at the University of Münster, Germany, and a PhD in genetic epidemiology at Erasmus University of Rotterdam, the Netherlands. As the leader of genetics core of the Alzheimer's Disease Research Center at Columbia University, Dr. Ritz's research focuses on the identification of the genes causing Alzheimer's disease, and she has published over 150 scientific articles on this topic. She has led authored the largest genetic study on Alzheimer's disease conducted to date in African Americans, which led to the identification of several novel risk genes associated with dementia risk in people of color and populations. Dr. Ritz is a lead investigator on several studies causing Alzheimer's disease in African Americans and studies on families with very early onset of dementia symptoms. The main goal of these studies is to identify the genes that cause Alzheimer's disease. Please welcome Dr. Ritz that will be talking in the next minutes about Alzheimer's disease. Take it away, Dr. Ritz. Thank you so much.
Yes, Sandra, thank you for the kind introduction. I'm Dr. Christian Ries from Columbia University, from the Taub Institute and the Department of Neurology at Columbia University. And as Sandra said already, my work focuses mostly on Alzheimer's disease, its causes, its risk factors, and also the genes causing the disease and increasing risk of the disease. So the goal of really this presentation is to give you a presentation where hopefully I'm answering a lot of questions you might have about this disease, because what we know is that many people in the community have a lot of questions about Alzheimer's disease because it's such a frequent and devastating disease. So hopefully the session today will help to answer some of these questions, and after my presentation we'll have time for the question and answer session. Also my team, we will provide you with their email addresses, so if there are any other questions you have, please don't hesitate to just reach out to us and we try to help you. So one of the main questions we always get is really, what is the difference between Alzheimer's disease and dementia? Because you hear both of these terms very often in the community. So dementia is simply an umbrella term, and it simply means problems with your memory. But then there are different causes of that. Stroke, for example, can lead to dementia, to problems with your memory. And Parkinson's disease, for example, can lead to dementia. And then there's Alzheimer's disease, which is simply the most frequent cause of dementia. And Alzheimer's disease accounts for about 75% of all dementia cases. So, often when we're talking with people about Alzheimer's disease, many people are very concerned because, I tell them Alzheimer's disease really means problems with your memory and remembering things. And then many people say, oh, this happens to me, so do I have Alzheimer's disease? So what is really the difference to normal aging? All of us forget things from time to time. That's absolutely normal. It's really normal to forget things, for example, where you put your keys, or maybe forget for a moment what day of the week it is, or things you thought about yesterday, or things that happened yesterday. So if you just forget these things for a moment, but then you can remember them again, it's nothing to be concerned about. So what really sets Alzheimer's disease apart is if there's consistent new change in your memory. And it's not a one-time issue, but it's really a consistent change compared to how it was before. That's really where the difference lies. So there are 10 warning signs and symptoms of Alzheimer's disease, and I would like just to take you through it, because these are the things really to watch out for. And again, here, just to remember, if any of these happens like once in a while, it's nothing to be concerned about. But the question is really, is that like do you have some of these symptoms, and it really is very consistent change compared to as it was before. So the first symptom you're seeing here is, so this woman really never needed to put like Post-its on her calendar in order to remember what to do and what she was supposed to do, but suddenly she needs to, because if she doesn't put these Post-its, she cannot remember what she's supposed to do that day. So it's really memory loss that affects day-to-day abilities and really how you're able to perform and get through the day. Then number 2 here, this man all his life prepared his eggs himself without a problem. He always knew, he'd take out a pan, he's putting some oils, he's putting the eggs into the pan, and then he fries them. And he was always able to do all these tasks in order to successfully prepare some eggs. Suddenly, he can't do this anymore. He cannot prepare the eggs because he forgets what are the individual steps he needs to do. He's not able to do the individual steps and remember the individual steps he needs to do in order to achieve this result and prepare himself some eggs. Number 3, problems with language. This woman here is holding up a cat, but she doesn't know what is the name for this object. Is it a pencil? Is it a chair? Is it a dog? What is the name of this object? So problems with language and with really remembering the right words to use and the names of objects. Number 4, he's been living in this neighborhood for 30 years. He always found a way to his friends, to the grocery store, to the post office without an issue. But suddenly he starts getting lost. One day he just starts getting lost. He can't find home. He doesn't know where the post office is, and he gets lost and does not arrive at home. So, and this happens more and more frequently. So that then might be a concern. Number 5, it's a little bit hard to see, but if you look at this woman closely, it's actually wintertime, but she's not dressed appropriately. Problems with judgment to make the right decision for the situation. She doesn't wear gloves, she doesn't wear winter boots, but she's just really way too lightly dressed for the situation. Making the right decisions and judging the situation. Problems with that. Number 6, he has problems with calculations. He's trying to pay his bills, but he can't do this anymore. All his life, he had no issues with that, no problems with that, but suddenly he's not able to do simple calculations, pay his bills. Number 7, misplacing objects and putting objects into strange locations. So if you see that this is her dress and she put it in the fridge. Another example would be, for example, to put a wallet into the bathtub, things like that. This is not like this everyday thing of misplacing your glasses or keys, which really happens to all of us. Nothing to worry about that. But if you recognize that your mother or your father, starts to really misplace things more often, puts them into locations where they really don't belong, and this keeps happening, and they can't remember where they put them, that might be something to be concerned about. Then number 8, 9, and 10 are really changes in mood and behavior, changes in personality. So this man, for example, was always somebody who had a very mellow personality, and suddenly really has frequent changes in mood and behavior. He becomes aggressive, and then he goes to being depressed, and then he goes to being angry without really a reason, and so suddenly he's displaying really mood swings frequently throughout the day. Number 9 is something very similar, changes in personality. And then number 10 is withdrawal, really loss of initiative. So he always went out, he met friends, he went to social events, he played tennis, he did sports, he went to the restaurant, and suddenly he starts to withdraw and losing interest in all of these activities. So these are the 10 warning signs of dementia. If you recognize some or all of these in your loved ones, and you see them happening again and again, then that might be something to be concerned about, and then you should go and see your doctor and bring this up. So Alzheimer's disease in the US is very, very frequent, not only in the US, but really globally. Just in the US alone, there are about 6 million people with Alzheimer's disease right now, and that means that Alzheimer's disease is the 6th leading cause of death, and about every 67 seconds, somebody develops the disease. So that's about 1,200 new cases per day. So it's one of the most frequent diseases we have here. It also heavily impacts the Queensboro. Queens is the largest it's the largest borough of New York City and the second most populous borough in New York City after Brooklyn's. And Queens is a ethnically very diverse urban area. One of the most ethnically diverse urban areas actually in the planet, and about 14% are seniors. So that means that dementia and Alzheimer's disease are very frequent in Queens and really impact the community, and that's why it's so important for us to have these events and talk to you and educate you about Alzheimer's disease. So there are 2 forms of Alzheimer's disease. most of the people really know the Alzheimer's disease, which occurs in senior and people over the age of 65. So that's the typical form, which really affects which really makes up 95% of all Alzheimer's disease cases. But then there's also what many people don't know, that there's a very early form of Alzheimer's disease, which runs in families. Multiple people in the family develop it at a very, very early age, often in the 30s. It only makes up 5% of all Alzheimer's disease cases, but it's really significant because if you can imagine, if there are like 3 or 4 people developing dementia in their 30s, it has a significant and devastating impact on the families. So where do you really get an Alzheimer's disease diagnosis? So how are people actually being diagnosed? So the first point of contact, if their concerns, are the primary care doctors. And those are the doctors you're familiar with, you talk to, you trust. So that's a very good first point of contact. You could also go see a neurologist, but often the primary care doctor is really the best first contact. Then there's also the Medicare annual wellness visit, which does include a memory testing in order to catch Alzheimer's disease and try to catch it in the early stage. So that is part of the annual wellness visit. And the same as similar to any other disease, the early diagnosis is critical. Okay, it's critical that we catch the disease as early as possible because then we have more options of treating it and also treating the symptoms. But the problem is the social stigma and the denial of symptoms, which often prevent people from actually going to see their doctor. So that's really also something. One of the other reasons why we're doing these outreach events is really to try to remove the stigma. It's simply a disease like any other diseases, and it's important that we talk about it and that it doesn't hold you back to go see your doctor or bring your loved one to a doctor if you think there's a concern. So in terms of the evaluation which is being done then for diagnosis, often your doctor would ask you about your medical history, what kind of other diseases you have, if you take medication, if there's a history of memory problems in the family, then they would do a memory test with you. And often they would also do a blood draw. And, sometimes they also do brain imaging, so an image of the brain, for example, with an MRI scan or a CAT scan. So that's really what a doctor would do in order to see if there's Alzheimer's disease or not. So there are 5 FDA-approved medications, which you see here on the slide, and these these are Exelon, Aricept, Razardine, Namenda, and memantine combined with donepezil. So these are medications which temporarily improve cognitive symptoms, so memory loss, confusion, problems with thinking, which occur in Alzheimer's disease. So these medications address these symptoms and make them less significant. Then there are also options and non-pharmacological therapies in order to enhance the quality of life of the person. There are things like computerized memory training, cognitive stimulation, and then also therapeutic activities which are aimed at maintaining overall health. Right now, we're unfortunately still in the situation that we cannot cure Alzheimer's disease. We can alleviate symptoms, we can slow the progression, but we do not have a cure for Alzheimer's disease yet. So, of course, one important question is, what are the risk factors for Alzheimer's disease? And what we think is that it's a mix of combination of factors, which are lifestyle factors and also genetics. Okay, and I talk a little bit about that in more depth at some of my later slides. So the most important risk factor, which I think is clear, is really age, right? So the risk increases with age. So over the age of 65, 1 in 9 seniors develop Alzheimer's disease, but then over the age of 85, it's already 1 in 3 seniors. So age really increases the risk, and it's the most significant risk factor. What most people don't know is that actually 2/3 of persons with Alzheimer's disease are women. So also sex is a risk factor, and women are at higher risk compared to men, but it's also very frequent in men. We think that this higher risk in women is likely due to genetic factors mostly, and also hormonal factors, which probably explain this difference in risk. So the epidemic of Alzheimer's disease is increasing. There over the last 10, 20 years, the numbers of people with Alzheimer's disease increased up to the year 2050, and I'm showing that on the next slide. We are actually expecting the number of people to triple or to quadruple up to about 16 million. And the reason for that is that other diseases are more treatable, like cancer, for example, and heart disease. So people live longer, we have more older people, and that's why we have more cases with Alzheimer's disease. Obviously, that's a huge burden for the health system, the public health system. So, and out of the top 10 diseases, and the top 10 most common diseases, Alzheimer's disease is still the only cause of death that cannot be prevented or cured. And what you see here on the slide is that since 2000, deaths from cancer and heart disease and stroke have significantly decreased because we developed therapies which are so effective now. But deaths from Alzheimer's disease have actually increased instead because we don't have a cure yet, and because more and more people are getting older, so we have more cases than before. So this is also what you're seeing here. So right now, as I said, we have about 6 million cases. We're expecting this to quadruple actually by the year 2050 to about 16 million cases just in the US. So Alzheimer's disease is the most expensive disease in America. It's the biggest burden on the health system. So this year, Alzheimer's disease will cost the nation about $290 billion. And because of this significant increase by the year 2050, these costs are expected to rise up to $1.1 trillion. So this is already imposing a devastating burden on the health system, and this is only just going to get worse. So there's also significant burden on caregivers. So more than 15 million Americans provide unpaid care for someone with Alzheimer's disease, and that often means that they completely need to drop out of the workforce. So caregivers on average lose about $15,000 of annual income. And this, of course, is a significant impact. Besides really the emotional stress and often the physical stress, this financial stress puts an additional layer of burden on the affected families. And it's very well, there's a lot of evidence that also caregivers get sick from Alzheimer's disease, from the consequences of Alzheimer's disease. So about 35% of caregivers report that their health has gotten worse because of the caregiving. So caregivers often develop emotional distress with depression and anxiety disorders, fatigue and social isolation, but also other health problems, for example, like high blood pressure is very, very common in caregivers and caused partly by the caregiving itself. So Alzheimer's disease has a particularly high impact on African Americans and Hispanics, and a much higher impact on these communities compared to non-Hispanic whites. So African Americans and Hispanics are twice as likely to get Alzheimer's disease. So they have double the risk. Persons of African Americans and Hispanic persons have twice the risk of Alzheimer's disease. They are more likely to have multiple cases in the family, so there's a much higher burden on the family compared to non-Hispanic white families. And they are often also diagnosed at a later stage, which reduces the effectiveness of treatment. And because of that, there's a significantly high financial toll on African American families caused by this disease. So, of course, the most important question is, why are African Americans and Hispanics at a higher risk compared to non-Hispanic whites? And there are two main explanations of this. One explanation is that African Americans and Hispanics more frequently have risk factors that increase the risk of Alzheimer's disease. And among these are diabetes, heart disease, hypertension, and stroke. You all know these risk factors. They are very common in the population. And they increase risk of, each one of these increases risk of Alzheimer's disease. And that's part of the explanation. So diabetes, heart disease, hypertension, and stroke are more frequent among African Americans and Hispanics compared to non-Hispanic whites. And that's part of the explanation why also Alzheimer's disease is more frequent, because these risk factors increase the risk of Alzheimer's disease. So what does that mean to you? Make sure you go to your doctor and have these risk factors under control. Okay, for all of these risk factors, there's very good treatments available. So go to the doctor, have these checked out, be on top of those, and take your medication. It's going to reduce the risk of heart disease. It's going to reduce the risk of stroke, but it's also going to reduce the risk of Alzheimer's disease. So it's very important. Just stay on top of it. So, but the other half of the explanation is genes. There are differences in genes between ethnic groups, and these genes likely account for differences in risk too, which means that African Americans and Hispanics, compared to non-Hispanic whites, have different sets of genes which increase the risk of Alzheimer's disease. So the genetics is the other part of the explanation. So, as we said in the introduction, as Dr. Fonseca said in the introduction, I also said earlier in my talk, I'm specialized in research on Alzheimer's disease, and the main goal of my research is really to find the causes of Alzheimer's disease and the genes which cause Alzheimer's disease, in particular in communities of color. So this is really what I'm dedicating my research to. And the main goal of these studies is really to, as I just said, understand the causes and the risk factors of the disease, and to identify and develop better treatments. So only if we understand the causes, we can develop the treatments. We need to first know what's going wrong in the brain and why. And once we know that, then we can start developing therapies. So I am focusing mostly on the genetics, and I will tell you why this is so important, and this is really where the future of Alzheimer's disease treatment lies. So maybe you have heard about that already. There's President Obama initiated the precision medicine initiative, and what this really means that, and this has really revolutionized cancer therapy in the last 10 years. So up to 10 years ago, everybody with breast cancer, every woman with breast cancer would get the same medication. In some women it was more effective. In some women, the same medication worked less well. Same thing for colon cancer and other cancers. You know, everybody would get the same chemotherapy, but in some people it didn't work. The question was why? Because they have different set of genes. So what precision medicine means, which really is applied every day now in cancer therapy, is that you're taking a person's blood, you look at their genes, okay, and based on their genes, you group them into different therapy groups, okay? So instead of a one-size-fits-all approach, people are grouped based on their genetic information on their genes and get different kinds of medication. So the best medication for their genetic makeup. So this group has a specific set of genes, they get this medication. The second group has a different set of genes, they get another medication because that works better for them. And the third group, again, has a third set of genes and gets a different medication, medication C, because that's the most effective based on their genetic makeup. So this really has revolutionized cancer therapy. The cancer therapies are much more efficient now, they work much better, and much more people survive because of this new approach. And precision medicine, sometimes we also call it personalized medicine because it really is personalized. We look at your set of genes, we say, okay, with this set of genes, you get medication A because that's going to be the best for you. Doesn't mean it's the best for person B, but for you, it is the best based on the genetic makeup you have. So this is exactly what we are going to do in Alzheimer's disease, and where the field is really moving. But what does that mean? That means that first we need to identify the genes and need to know the genes that cause Alzheimer's disease. Once we know all the genes that cause Alzheimer's disease, then when somebody comes to the doctor's office, we take their blood, we look at their genes, we group them into treatment groups and really personalize that person's treatment based on their genes. So this is why it's so important to do genetic research. So the genes are really the key to understand the disease. Once we know the genes, if I know the genes causing Alzheimer's disease, then we understand what is going wrong in the brain and why. So this is the most crucial step to therapy. And again, that also allows us to group people into the right treatment groups. So our research now has led to the discovery of more than 30 genes in Alzheimer's disease. And as I just said, once we know the genes, we know exactly for each of the genes, we know exactly what they do in the body. So by identifying these genes, we know what is going wrong in the body in Alzheimer's disease. And these 30 genes we discovered are telling us that in particular, inflammation, cholesterol, and communication of brain cells are an important part of the cause of Alzheimer's disease. So, but one fact is very important to know. Disease-associated genes differ between ethnic groups. And that means that genes we have identified in whites, we cannot just assume that they are also causative in African Americans or in Asians or in Hispanics. Genetics does not work like that. Okay, so what that means is that we need to do research studies separately in all ethnic groups, and we need to do it in all ethnic groups. In order to be able to help the African American community, we need to do genetic studies in African Americans. In order to be able to help the Asian community, we need to do genetic research studies on Alzheimer's disease in Asians. The problem is that there's a critical lack really of research participants from communities of color. So most of these studies we have done and most of the large studies available have mostly white participants. And we have had a lot of success with these studies. We know a lot of genes now for whites, but we need to do the same work for other communities and for other ethnic groups. Okay, so that for all the ethnic groups, we know what are the genes causing disease in this ethnic group. So we're doing the NI-LOAD study. I just want to tell you a little bit about it. So the NI-LOAD study is one of the biggest, it's a nationwide study. It's funded by, it's an initiative of the National Institutes of Health. And it's been set up more than 20 years ago in order to assess people with Alzheimer's disease and find the genetic causes, find the genes that cause Alzheimer's disease. And it's the largest and the most frequently used Alzheimer's disease genetics data set in the world. And this is the data set which has contributed to finding all these 30 genes. So, but as I just said earlier, so the NI-LOAD study has a lot of white participants, but we do not have enough participants of African American ancestry and Hispanic ancestry. So, and we are continuously increasing the number of participants we have in the study. As I said, it's ongoing for 20 years. We keep increasing it. And we also need to increase the diversity of our study population so that we can really help every community. So if you are someone you know is affected by memory problems, I hope that you consider joining the study to help us move Alzheimer's disease research and therapy development forward in all ethnic groups. So just to let you know quickly what participation would entail. It can be done over Zoom. Usually we do it in person. Obviously now that's not possible. And also in the future, we will move to Zoom if that's really what the participant prefers. So the evaluation takes about an hour to an hour and a half. We take a blood sample, about 2 tablespoons. And we do a brief memory assessment, and then we also do a questionnaire on the medical history. All of this, so this is really all. It's a blood sample, it's a brief memory test, a questionnaire of medical history, and this is pretty much all we need in order to really do this important research. All collected information, that's a very common concern. There are no names attached. All collected information from all participants will be de-identified, and nobody can ever connect your name with any kind of research results. But also important to us is really to if you don't know which doctor you should go, we can help you. We can help you see a doctor or refer you also to a support group. So if that is a concern, please reach out to us and we'll be able to help you. So this is the contact. You have heard earlier from both Isri and Sandra. So those are the 2 contact persons for our studies. So if you're interested in joining, here's the information. We can also distribute a booklet with this information. And again, if you have questions about Alzheimer's disease in general, or if you need help to see a doctor, we can also help you with that. And with that, I close my presentation. Thank you so much for your attention, and we'll have a question and answer session in case there are questions I can answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ritz, for your presentation. Thank you, everyone, for your fabulous presentation. It was very informative. So I guess we'll start with the Q&A. Some of the questions you already addressed in your presentation, but I will ask them anyway, just in case someone missed it. So the first question is Alzheimer's hereditary or genetic?
Yes, so it depends a little bit on the form. If you remember, I said there are two forms, the early form and the late onset form. So the very early form, it's very highly genetic. And that's why so many people in the same family have it often. But also the late onset form is genetic. We know that certain genes increase the risk. And that there are additional genes we haven't found yet which cause the disease. So both forms, Alzheimer's disease, has a very large genetic component.
Thank you. The next question is, if there is no cure, what are the benefits of early diagnosis?
It's very, very important for many reasons. So first of all, just simply in terms of the medication, there's medication which can help to slow the progression. That's important. Then also often persons with Alzheimer's disease have additional symptoms, for example, like hallucinations. The medication and these symptoms really impact everyday life. There are medications available to help with that. So that's very important too. But then also, it's important to be able to plan, for example. It's important to know that your loved one have the disease and you can really plan for what might be coming your way. But then also what we know now is that obviously, hopefully we are just around the corner for more efficient treatment, right? So knowing that your loved one has it is important. If you don't know that they have it, you cannot get them access to these novel developments.
Thank you. The next question is, can diabetes and a heart condition lead to dementia or by a bipolar disorder?
So diabetes increases the risk of dementia. So that doesn't mean that not everybody who has diabetes develops dementia. That's a very important distinction. But it increases your risk of having dementia, of getting dementia. So it is a risk factor, and it's important to have it under control. The same thing for heart disease, probably less than diabetes. So diabetes is a strong risk factor. Heart disease also is a risk factor, probably a little bit less than diabetes. That's what the studies show. So what's really important is if you have diabetes or heart disease or high blood pressure, it's very well treatable. Just go see your doctor and have it under control. It's very important for your brain too. Bipolar disorder, I'm not sure I understood the question correctly. So if the question is, does bipolar disorder increase your risk of Alzheimer's disease? There's not many studies of that. We know that there's a association between depression and Alzheimer's disease. That we know.
Okay, thank you. And before I ask the last question, I would like to welcome all of the attendees here today to drop their questions in the Q&A box. If you still have questions that you would like to ask, you still have time to ask them. The next question is, what happens if dealing with a family member and they don't want to admit they have this disease to seek treatment?
Yes, so this is a situation that is often encountered because obviously it's very hard for people who recognize that they have memory problems really to maybe face the reality and the truth. But there are organizations out there who can help caregivers to deal with that and to approach their loved ones. And one of the organizations here in the city is called Caring Kind. And I really recommend people to reach out to Caring Kind if there's a situation like that. So Caring Kind is the organization, the leading organization in the city here, who provides support for caregivers of people with dementia. And this is a situation many families come across, and Caring Kind is there for exactly that, to really see, tell you how do you deal with that, how do you approach your loved one in order to get them diagnosed and get them go to the doctor. Again, it's very important. I think it really depends a little bit on the person itself on how to deal with that, but it's very important to be part of a support group or organizations like Caring Kind, who can give you the support and give you tips and advice of how to deal with these kind of situations. But it is important to get your loved one to the doctor and get a proper diagnosis.
Thank you for answering the questions. Now we have attendees that have their hands raised in the chat. So I'll just select each one and you can go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, my name is Marla, and my question is, what is the suicide rate when it comes to Alzheimer's?
Good evening, Marla. So the suicide rate is higher than compared to the normal population. I can't give you exact numbers right now, but it is at some point, because I don't have updated numbers, but at some point, like 3-4 years ago, was 10 to 15% increase in suicide rate compared to people without dementia.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Marla. I will now move along to the next question. Thank you for joining us. You can go ahead. You can unmute your mic. Let me see if this person. While we wait for this person to unmute their mic, our office will drop information in the chat regarding suicide. We'll drop the suicide hotline contact information in the chat. So if you or someone you know is experiencing symptoms or those emotions, definitely reach out to someone. Please reach out to someone. There's plenty of help out there, plenty of help available. You are not alone, and please reach out to the suicide hotline or someone you trust or someone close to you. You can also reach out to our office if you are experiencing suicidal thoughts. You can give us a call at 718-286-3000 or email info@queensbp.org. Your call will be confidential. So please definitely reach out. If anyone has any further questions, please drop them in the chat, or you can raise your hand and I will ask you to unmute your mic.
Tiffany, while we're waiting, I would like to do the poll questions for feedback. I would like to ask you kindly, everyone, to give us your feedback for the presentation, and if you'd like a follow-up by Columbia Tim. And thanks in advance for doing that. You can launch the questions, Tiffany, and you will see questions on your screen. You can click directly on them. And it's important to mention that All the answers, all the responses is voluntary, and the information being collected by Columbia is only the purpose to follow up with you if you wish. And the Queensborough President's Office will not be retaining any answers collected from this questionnaire. You can go ahead, Tiffany. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I would just like to add, I will also add the New York City Thrive contact information. So if anyone is experiencing, again, if anyone is experiencing suicidal thoughts and emotions, please reach out to Thrive as well. They are on social media, and I'll drop that information in the chat. If there are no more questions, I don't see any more hands raised in the chat. So if there are no more questions, we can wrap up. Okay. I see one more. Okay, I see a hand raised.
Hi. Thank you for the presentation. Really appreciate it. I'm actually the staff member working from the Alzheimer's Association. So thank you so much for this. Just want to mention, we also here to help. I'm the represented staff member working for the Queensborough. So just feel free to reach out to us, 800-202-39002, alz.org. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I take it that there are no more questions. I take it that your presentation was very thorough. Thank you again thank you Columbia University and Taub Institute for your presentation on Alzheimer's disease. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight. If you have any questions or comments, please reach out to our office. You can give us a call, again, at 718-286-3000, or email us at info@queensbp.org. Thank you and have a good night.